Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here, once again based on one of your newer suggestions. This one having to do with a fascinating name, one that I saw that I instantly knew I just had to talk about here. When you hear this name, and then when you see the information that I'll present here in a minute, you'll definitely know why I wanted to share it with everyone here. Also, it has to do with yet another cryptid found here in the United States, and also another cryptid that may have been around for a long time. In fact, maybe even up to the early 1800s. That's his earliest experience. It's been cited by farmers. It's been cited by soldiers, no less too. More on that here in a minute. And there's even an extraterrestrial twist that could be associated with it. So how about that? All those things in one when it comes to this cryptid. But you're looking at it now and instantly you can see why I wanted to share it here. Its name is definitely very catchy. It has a hook. It's known as the Crocodingo. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with this very, very unique mishmash of creatures. So what is this Crocodingo? Well, it's a creature that's again found here in the United States, specifically there in Tennessee, specifically in the city of Oneida. So those of you that just know that name that hard, maybe you live there, or maybe you're living there now, or maybe know others that do so as well that live there, maybe family members or co-workers. Maybe you might know more information on the local side as far as this creature, and if you do, then please post those comments below. But I'm wondering if saying the city of Oneida instantly had others realize that yes, they've heard of this creature. But yes, if you wanted to talk about the physical characteristics, you're obviously seeing that representation of it now. Basically, it's the body of a dog slash wolf slash coyote, maybe even a dingo, and then it's the head of a crocodile, hence the name Crocodingo. If you're wondering why it's not called like Crocoyote or Crocodog, something like that, I'll mention that more here in a minute, but Crocodingo is essentially a hybrid of those two creatures. Anything involving a dog-like creature with the head of a crocodile, and that's essentially what you have here. Although I have seen some other representations, and it's the opposite, like it showcases more than the lines of a body of a crocodile and then the head of an actual dog, coyote, or wolf or something like that. But again, that gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. And then as far as its sightings and apparently when they first started, it may or may not be this, but the origin seems to be tied to July 31st, 1839, and specifically with an encounter of a resident there, a guy by the name of Hank Lemon had. So here's what happened to him, and apparently his experience is the one that kickstarted everything. So on July 31st, 1839, he was living there in Huntsville, Tennessee. He stated that the sky just started acting weird, almost otherworldly. There was this green nebulous glow that was right there in the sky, and it was just permeating throughout the entire area. He mentioned it and likened it to the Northern Lights. Those of you that have seen the Northern Lights, let's say in person, if you're lucky enough, or maybe you've seen it on film or on TV shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful illumination of the sky that basically encompasses the entire area. Well, that's what was happening to him near his home on that fateful night. But then all of a sudden there was just one single blinding light, almost shooting like a laser from the sky all the way to the ground and into the woods just behind his house. It almost seemed like it was a instant. The way he described it was a dead straight bolt of lightning, and then it was gone. It was gone. Those glowing lights were gone, but replaced in its sights was something that he described as a strange creature, a horribly alien strange creature, and there it was moving very, very quickly from point A to point B, passing through the woods right in front of him. He saw it, and then also his two dogs saw it, and no doubt that they were just screaming their heads off, just barking left and right at what they were seeing. But in those few moments, that's what he described as the first origin of the Crocodingo. Interestingly enough, too, not only did he see it, but apparently you'll know you'll be in the vicinity of this creature because you can also smell it. Apparently it has a very, very horrid smell, one of the worst smells you could imagine. In fact, this was his direct quote associated with that smell. He said there was this horrible charnel stench in the air and something else, a horrible thing, something that would drive a man crazy should he be exposed to it for too long a period. He was stating this as he was talking to investigators, and again, that gives the idea of how serious things were, because most people, if they see something like this or smell something like this, they might keep it to themselves, but no. In his case, he didn't care what others would think of him. He was telling investigators what occurred, and that led to the origin of the sightings themselves. But this smell was, again, something else that just really, really stood out. But yes, other residents there within that county began seeing these things. In fact, they in turn speculated what this creature could be based on the origin of it purportedly coming from the sky. And again, those weird greenish lights. They thought it was something along the lines of an alien race. Maybe they did some kind of mixture of animals, a hybrid experimentation of sorts. They dropped it off after they left in their spacecraft, that kind of stuff. Obviously, it takes a lot of proof to have something along those lines, but that's at least what the residents were stating when it came to these initial sightings, and then them trying to get to some final answers as well. And then also, again, if you're wondering why it's called Crocodingo and again not something like Crocoyote, Crocodog, it's because of this. Apparently that term, that name was coined by a guy named Curio Allen Brown. He was someone that traveled to the U.S. from Victoria, Australia. Obviously in Australia they have dingoes there, and so when he may or may not have seen this creature, I don't know if he did or didn't, but he may have heard of it and then associated it with a dingo rather than, let's say, something else here like a coyote or a wolf or something like that. And when that occurred, it just stuck. The name is more catchier, no, when it comes to that. Crocodingo is definitely more catchier than some of the other ones that I mentioned, but that's at least the origin, first associated with the sightings tied to Hank Lemon, and then the origin associated next with the actual name itself. But following that time period, going into the late 1800s, farmers started to see what was happening with this creature in abundance. Fishermen would also hear the legends and see this creature as well as they did their fishing. So much so, in fact, that they would take their catches and then take a small amount from them and then leave them by the creek beds. I don't know if it was like an offering to the creature, but I think it was more on the lines of to keep the creature distracted from their fishing. They didn't want to run into this beast and vice versa. So if they left some kind of bait or food behind, then this creature, whatever it was, this Crocodingo, would eat that stuff and stay away from this area. And then apparently there was so much fishing that was suddenly down, like in other words of the fish population, that a lot of the residents there blamed the Crocodingo. They thought that this thing was eating so many of the fishes there within the creeks themselves. And then cut to a time period involving the Civil War. And that's where things take yet another interesting turn. Apparently, Confederate soldiers would see this Crocodingo as well. They would see it pass around areas there in the battlefields. And when they did so, they even saw one of them apparently eating the corpse of a man. In fact, it was eating its face. It was eating that poor person's face. And then that's, again, just a brief sighting that was associated there from those soldiers. And then cut to the 1900s. And then that's where railroad and brick workers were there in abundance in that same area. They in turn started to see this creature too. As they were laying all these new tracks on the ground and building these new rails, that's when they saw this creature there. And not only that, but they saw remnants associated with the creature. Apparently it might have a very, very strong jaw because they saw these bite marks embedded within the steel of the actual rails themselves. Imagine imagine that. It would take a powerful force to be able to create those kind of bite marks right there on steel itself. But that's what this creature did. And then cut to the 1920s, 1925 area, and there was a new sewer system that was being created there in Oneida. Well, once again, this creature made its abundant sightings within new workers, in this case sewer workers. And sewer workers would state that they would hear these unique sounds emanating from the storm drains. It almost sounded like it was some kind of horrible alien type howls. And when they did so, they would also see these strange lights coming out from the area, and they would associate it with the legend of the Crocodingo. And then they would try to, find the source of what was happening, and obviously nothing would be found. But interestingly enough, it would all dissipate by the time daybreak came about. So this gives you an idea that this is more along the lines of a nighttime creature. In fact, there was a sewer worker, a guy by the name of Jack Bannister. He may have been one of the few sewer workers who actually saw the creature in person. He stated that this creature nudged the cover of a manhole with its dog-like mannerisms and then slithered right down into the sewer. It takes a lot of power to be able to remove a manhole because of its size, because of its weight, but that's essentially what this creature was able to do. And then by the time he got to that area, that's when he described again that there was a strong smell, and then that's when he saw, as what he described, the mangy type wolf with an alien type head, a crocodile type head, in other words. And then that was it. And then as the sightings grew less and less, finally into the 2000s, you have to go to June 16, 2012. There was these two workers that were by a local cinema. They in turn saw a creature, strange looking creature that looked very reminiscent to the Crocodingo come out of a distant manhole. But as they went to that area, as much as they could, try to catch it and see more evidence, this creature was gone. It was completely gone, and then that was it. But as far as the explanations, what is this Crocodingo? There's the extraterrestrial thing. There's also the idea that it's just a real cryptid, one that was just undiscovered, but just now out there in the world and people are seeing it. Or it could have a real life explanation. And what I mean is this, out there in the wild, there's many of those dog-like creatures, wolves and coyotes. They fall victim to mange. Mange is that horrible skin condition that can occur, and when that happens, then the skin itself becomes very, very scaly. The fur gets gone, there's bite marks from the constant scratching, and then there's also going to be the scales. Like, they look like the skin gets so hard that it looks like scales themselves. But interestingly enough, mange also creates a very horrible smell, especially by the ear area. So the reason I mention all this is because I'm wondering how many of these sightings could potentially be just a real life dog or coyote or wolf that is just suffering a severe mange condition. It would look scaly. It would look horrible, to the point again that you would have something that looks like a crocodile-like body, and yet the smell could also be another factor that could be coming from the mange, and that's where people confuse it with apparent sightings of the Crocodingo. Just my own opinion, but I wanted to give that mention here too. And if you want one last twist as far as what this creature could be, it could be even a shapeshifter, it could be a skinwalker. I'm not really going to go into too much details there because of my hesitation again on skinwalkers, and it could be tied to no less than the Bell Witch, the famous Bell Witch there in Tennessee. Apparently, she was able to create hybrid-like creatures when she was first stalking that farmer John Bell. And if she can do that, as far as a dog-rabbit hybrid, why not do also a crocodile/wolf-coyote-dingo type hybrid? So there's that area there too. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this very, very unique cryptid, the Crocodingo. Anyone else there in the city of Oneida, or maybe there in Tennessee, that has more information, maybe on a local side, please post those comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this creature. Maybe anybody there know about the smell that I'm describing. Maybe if you've had that as an experience, I'd love to hear what your comment is there too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.